We always have a question from the Discord server. Every week they vote on what question they most want to ask us this week, and it is this. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
You sure?
Can't say for sure until you tell me what the question is, but...
Are you sitting down?
Now I am.
Okay. Can I do this? All right. You two have a wonderful dynamic and obvious love and respect for each other, which many of your listeners find inspiring. I just got engaged to a fellow DarkHorse podcast listener, a man I met on the DarkHorse Discord. That's
Hell
awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome. What is your best advice for young married couples?
Well, I will give you...
Big question.
It's a little late for my best advice, but hopefully this applies to you. And if not, it's going to apply to
What's
you.
late? Why is it too late for your best advice?
You'll see. The advice I give
Zach
people
knows.
is never consider a long-term relationship, especially marriage, with somebody who does not have a sense of humor about
It's not
themselves.
funny.
Good one. But, so anyway, you've gotten engaged. Presumably you've passed each other's tests. Certainly.
You both laughed a lot.
If you're DarkHorse listeners, you're going to have a sense of humor about yourself. I feel that is likely to be near universal, if not universal, amongst people who actually put up with us. So, anyway, Mazel Tov, for sure. But, the point is the sense of humor about yourself, the fact that you are not synonymous with your conscious mind, which means that you're bringing a lot of stuff to a relationship that both you and your partner are spectators to, right? So I will give this example. There's lots of stuff about me that's not great for a relationship, and it's not stuff that I would defend. When I say me, I mean the conscious me, and the conscious me is not in favor of those things either. So, the ability to recognize that you bring stuff to a relationship that you wouldn't bring if you were, choosing all of your features a la carte is an important tool in the arsenal of navigating the complex relationship that is marriage.
But our features aren't a la carte, right? We can't, unlike what many sort of ahistorical, ascientific, reductionist approaches to things today would have us believe, say, I want a child who shall have this characteristic and this one and this one and this one. Oh, and over there, I like this. And that's the thing I want.
Yep.
We are, of course, the result of complex, not just evolutionary, but especially developmental history. And I'm just going to keep talking about you because you started, but some of the characteristics that you have that do make you particularly challenging to live with are in trade-off relationship with some of your greatest strengths.
Yeah, in fact,
and I don't think either of us knew that when we got together when we were 20, right? Or when we became friends when we were 16, right? I don't think we were thinking that way. But you can't. There is no magic wand that could disappear the frustrating things, because with it then would go the other things in the trade-off.
Well, there are two ways that can work. Some of the things are linked developmentally. And there's no reason that if you got rid of the frustrating part...
Now, after they're both already laid down.
Right. But the point is they effectively have that linkage because you can't separate your development.
You couldn't have gotten here without them both, but now if you could,
yep.
I don't know, EMDR, like whatever, some technique to like get rid of some of the things on one side of the trade-off now that the development process is over.
Yep.
Would be possible, but you said there were two things.
So there's two ways the relationship can work. You can have a developmental linkage where some defect is connected to some strength, but you could get rid of the defect. It wouldn't, you still develop the strength. But then there are other things, and I think a lot of my characteristics are this way. It's not even that there is a relationship between the two characteristics. They're the same characteristic, right? It's just that in some contexts they're good, and in some contexts they're lousy, and those things aren't separable, even even in principle.
To the question of sort of advice to young couples, one of the things that we did a lot in the first 10 years of our relationship, and to some degree in the second 10 years as well. But especially in our 20s, was we spent a lot of time apart. And this was before cell phones. And by apart, I mean, like, I went to live on an island off the coast of Madagascar for 5 months, for instance. And you went to Panama. And I joined you in Panama for some of your long time there. And you came to Madagascar with me for one of my longer field seasons there. But my longest field season in Madagascar, you weren't there. And most of the time that you were in Panama, I wasn't there. And there were also shorter field seasons as well. Like your very first field work experience with Bob Trivers in Jamaica was when we were still in college, and you went for a quarter, 7 weeks or so of a fall quarter, and I was back at Santa Cruz in school, and had our apartment and our cats and everything. And it's super useful. It's incredibly useful. It's not, if you're newly deeply in love, it's not what you think you want. It's not what you choose. It's not like, I'm looking for an opportunity to spend time away from you. If that's where you are, there's a problem, right? Yep. But if you're driven to do things that have you apart, and that's an unfortunate reality of it, it's remarkable what can be learned from the time apart. And I think if it was always just one person who was going and one person who was always tending the home fires, it would create a dynamic that might be hard to recover from fully. But if each of you occasionally go, and in our case it was months at a time, but I think even a week, even a few days, honestly, even a few days, it's you learn something different in months than you do in a week or a few days, I think. But you learn things about who you are in combination, and specifically, I don't think this is the biggest thing, but the thing that you have returned to often, that I said to you at one point after you came back, I think from Jamaica, was, and that was the first time I think that one of us had gone for any length of time, and we had by then, we had spent a whole summer traveling together in Central America, like we had done a lot of intense stuff together. But I had begun already to grow frustrated with some of those things in the Tradeoff relationship. Really? Yeah, the sort of the executive function and not completing tasks.
Function exactly?
Precisely, yes. And the sort of the chaos everywhere. And so it was something of relief at first, like, oh, okay, I could just like get things clean and neat and like not have to maintain them, because they just maintain themselves with a little bit of input every day. And that was something of relief. But I realized that I had then started just putting a whole lot of things onto your account that didn't belong there. A lot of things did, but the fact that you did in fact inadvertently grow mushrooms in the carpet by your side of the bed stands as one of the best examples.
Now, you are forcing me to have to defend myself. First of all, you use the term clean, which is not really what you mean.
You are never. It's never gross. It's never.
And the
and
mushrooms,
it's never food.
which I acknowledge did grow on my side of the bed. What happened was
not on the bed, on the carpet.
On the carpet. Mm-hmm. I left some clothing, some laundry on the floor.
There was strata. There was paperwork. And there was clothing.
These people who are now suffering from misinformation that you are inculcating. No, wait a second. I'm acknowledging the mushrooms. But the point is...
Strata.
Can I get to why the mushrooms grew so that they are not possessed of some sense that I have a hygiene issue?
It's not hygiene. It's 100% not hygiene.
It's a neatness issue. And so hold on. The laundry, which should not have remained on the floor for months.
Or the papers.
Can I finish? Okay. The laundry was by the window. We were living in Santa Cruz. And some rain came in through the window. And the laundry trapped the moisture, which did then allow mushrooms to grow there. But the mushrooms were not... It was a neatness issue, which is to say laundry, relatively clean laundry, sitting where it shouldn't, is a neatness issue, not a hygiene issue.
I actually think that was important.
I think it's important.
Yes, but it wasn't just laundry, and it wasn't like a couple of weeks. It was laundry and papers.
I'm not
However, because it had become frustrating to deal with a number of these things, I, in living with you, began to assume that every frustration that I had in the apartment in the small apartment that we shared was clearly attributable to you. And I didn't know that I was doing this, but I think I clearly did. And I don't remember actually something about like the toothpaste or something. Like there were a number of things that once you were gone still continued to happen. Like we're still, vaguely irritating to me. I was like, well, it's clearly not Bret. He's not doing this from Jamaica. So I need to be more generous and careful about not attributing all of the frustrations that I'm having domestically in this space to him and his presence, because if they continue to happen when he's not here, clearly it's not him.
All right.
So the absence can be very useful in terms of calibration, among other things.
Yep. I would say a couple things about it, though. It's a diminishing returns problem, right? A few days, super useful. A few weeks, useful. At some point in months,
it's just not fun. It's not.
So,
yeah.
I wouldn't say the more the better. I would just say that there's something useful in the calibration. But I want to, your acknowledgement upon my returning that you had discovered that some of the stuff you were frustrated with me about wasn't me meant a lot to me. Enough that decades later, it's still a fact in the development of our relationship that you and I both remember, right? It was very straightforward of you to own up to it right away, right? That was, a sign of depth of character. And so, I was convinced of the depth of your character from the beginning, but nonetheless, it proved out, right? I want to tell a reverse story,
Okay.
In which I think I impressed you in this regard. You and I had
I have no idea yet what's coming.
You may have forgotten the story, though. You are about to remember it very clearly, I think. Very early in our relationship, we had it wasn't an argument, but a disagreement. You'd said something about, like, please put the lid of the toilet down when you're done, right? And I said something like, I don't get it. Why doesn't every person just adjust the lid for whatever they're about to do?
I remember this.
Right? Mm-hmm. And you said, well, look, it's very simple, right? There are 4 scenarios, woman pees, woman poops, man pees, man poops, right? The only one of these for which the lid goes up is man pees. Therefore, I as a woman wouldn't have to touch that damn thing if it weren't for your presence in the bathroom. And I said, oh, now that you put it that way, that's a slam dunk. That's an excellent argument. And that is, I'm sure occasionally I have left the seat up, but, it's probably
only once did I almost fall into the toilet in the middle of the night.
All right, but you will grant me that from the moment of that argument, it has been a very rare occurrence that
Absolutely.
I have left the seat up.
Yep.
Right. So anyway, I think the idea that actually there was a confusion. I knew it was my confusion as soon as you made that argument because it was a slam dunk. And the point is, it actually alters behavior because it's a good argument. Why shouldn't it? Right.
Yeah.
So those two
Yep.
things, I think, give you a hint about how to navigate these things. Did they say how young they are?
I don't think so. Nope. Although I do hear from the lovely woman who sends me the questions that this does not help explain it, but that they got engaged on a glacier in Alaska. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool.
That's cool. That really gives us no information about how old you are. I mean, really nothing.
Yeah. And I would also just add
Great.
one more
That's awesome.
caveat before we let this question go, which is I don't think you're living in a normal era. And I think the importance of your pair bond is even greater than normal by some substantial factor. And so what I would say is, if you're right for each other, just look past all the stuff that might ordinarily trouble you and realize that you,
including the mushrooms in the carpet.
especially the mushrooms in the carpet, should that happen to you. But look, also don't let your laundry accumulate under a window where rain gets in,
Close the window.
for example. They were not psychedelic mushrooms.
And yes, we checked.
Yes. And we would know. But anyway, you know, if you've got the right person, nothing else matters. Just do what is necessary to make it work. And to the extent that things are rough, figure out how to fix it, because this is not an era in which you want something trivial to break you up.
Yeah. And congratulations. Mazel tov.
Mazel tov.
Okay, another wedding question, marriage question this is now from DarkHorse Submissions, and we've already spent like 15 minutes, so we're going to just try to get through a few of these. How did you get married? Did you tweak a classic marriage tradition as you have with your Hanukkah tradition?
Indeed.
Yeah, we did. And I think we would have been more intentional about it now. We didn't get married. Like, we'd been together already for, 8 or 9 years before we got married.
Yep.
It's going to be 25 years this year. So yeah, we got married outside in the Sierras, in the Sierra Nevada, near Mammoth Lakes, where Bret spent a lot of time as a kid, and I spent a little bit of time as a kid. And God entered the scene just as we were saying our vows. Suddenly there was an electrical storm and there was a thunderclap, which is pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome.
As I remember it, we borrowed a few elements, but we didn't do so from other traditions, but we didn't do so with a ton of explicit care. So we did. So I think we did the stepping on the glass from the Jewish tradition. We didn't have a chuppah or anything. Bob Trivers, perhaps the world's greatest living evolutionary biologist, who was our undergraduate advisor, was our officiant. That was fantastic. He's a amazing man, and he was our friend. It's our friend, and so we got this sort of Darwinian wedding ceremony. But he insisted on sitting down with us beforehand, a day or two beforehand. So we did a backpacking trip with some of our friends for the 4 days before we got married, so that we didn't have to be in the thick of all of the planning right before. And so we came back like 24 hours before or something. And from Yosemite to Mammoth, we went over what pass? Tioga? No, that's the 395.
I
don't remember.
I think it's Stevenson. No, that's Washington. It's like
Yeah,
it's like
forgetting. I'm
Davidson.
totally forgetting.
I can't remember the
Yeah.
name of the pass. It will occur to
Have a
me
picture.
in an hour. But
Yeah.
there's a frog pond up there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a cool panoramic picture of several of us walking at the very top above tree line.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we did that, and then Uncle Bob, as Trivers liked us to call him, had us sit down with him as if he had been clergy.
Yep.
To talk with us about our intentions, and specifically wanted to know if we intended to have children. And while we had no immediate plans, we both said, yeah, ultimately, yes. And as I remember it, you tell me if you remember something different, he said, okay, good, then this is easy, because I know what to do. If you told me that you didn't intend to have children, I don't know exactly, how to do.
Yeah.
He had never been an officiant before, as far as I know. Like we asked him to, and he said yes. And but it made sense for him to honor us coming together and formally bringing our lives together, if we were ultimately going to be bringing more lives into the world. But he wouldn't have had as much of a sense of what to do if we had said no.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, if you think about it from an evolutionary biologist perspective, the idea of a marriage that isn't about producing children in some sense is some novel oddity.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have necessarily known. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had, I guess, two, my oldest, dearest friend and maybe yours also, your best friend from high school. We had them, Diane and John, did a little bit from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. They did the coin
The coin
flip
flipping
from the
scene,
beginning, which just baffled most of the people in the audience, but we thought it was fantastic. And both of them, I don't remember who played Rosencrantz and who played Guildenstern, but it was terrific.
Doesn't matter. They're both dead.
Not Diane or John,
No.
thankfully.
Yes, but Rosencrantz and also Guildenstern.
And Guildenstern, yes. So we brought a little absurdist theater in the form of Tom Stoppard in. It was all very Darwinian. There was the thunderclap and the lightning in the distance, just as we were saying our vows. And it was outside, and it was good.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.